So you have effort that results in pleasure, then you have a type of effort that results in pain, then you have the type of effort that's sort of neutral.
Yeah.
But if you depend on effort per se, as in you depend on having something to do, you will always then value effort that results in pleasure more. In other words, you will always value sensuality. And from that point of view of being fully dependent upon having something to do, effort that results in pleasure seems effortless. Because there is a reward at the end of it, basically. But what you want to, as I said before, what you want to learn is to stop being dependent upon needing something to do. And that's something you have to be like factoring factoring into the environment you choose to live in. So you do your duties, like in this case here, you walk Pindapat. That's about it. That's the only duty you have. Now, if you have duties arising around your kuti, you have to sweep the leaves, you have to repair the roof. That's also fine, because it's done for the practical purpose. But if your mind is just finding things to do, because without having anything to do, it feels like it's sinking, well, that's not a valid reason. Or rather, that's a reason. The reason is distraction. Even if you do things that are practical, you're doing them because you want to distract yourself. Now, you can't expect a clear cut and perfection immediately, but you want to start becoming aware of that background motivation in regard to your choices and actions. So that's why the Buddha said, the proper basis for your meditation is abiding in non-activity, like jhanas basically. And by that it's not just you don't do things like work, talk, and so on, duties around your kuti, but you stop doing, including like things like reading. You stop doing your meditation techniques, inverted commas. You stop watching your breath. You stop being mindful. You stop doing everything. And then that results in that natural mindfulness of what's already there. So your thoughts will be arising, but you are not actively thinking. Your body will be breathing, but you are not actively breathing. By being aware of the non-activity aspect within these activities means basically not appropriating these activities, not making them yours. Means being mindful of them peripherally without being engaged with them. That means abiding in non-activity, and that's very pleasant actually. If you cultivate abiding in non-activity, you will stop valuing the pleasure that results out of effort, such as sensuality. It's too coarse. The fact that you have to make the effort in the first place means no amount of pleasure at the end of it will justify it from the point of view of non-activity, non-disturbance, non-pleasure. Doesn't mean you run away, you lock yourself, you don't talk to anyone, you avoid your duties. No, it means that you do the duties for the right reasons, and when those reasons are depleted, as in practical purpose is finished, the roof is repaired, you don't go talking to people, you don't go mixing, you don't find other things you need to do. Or if you do, you start becoming aware that you are actually doing it for the reasons of distraction. And then all you have to do is nothing. And that's something people would struggle, because even the people who stop doing work, stop distracting themselves in coarser terms, they would go to remote dwellings and social, and then they would be doing their meditation. They would be doing their practice. So they just replaced coarse doing with more refined doing, but they're certainly still active. All you need to do is sit down, let your mind think, let your body breathe. Don't lose the sight of it, but certainly don't try to actively control it, and don't try to do it. Anything. Oh, I must now, because I finished the work, I'm sitting here, I must then now practice the peripheral awareness and the mindfulness. You must discern it, but you must not do it.
I almost never really do techniques, but
no, I gave that as an example to basically other people who might be listening to this talk, because that is quite common. And even if you don't define it as a technique, you would be doing something.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm reading the suttas, I'm trying to understand. Yeah, that's good. But there is also a time and place where you should stop doing even that. because you recognize even that it's a good activity. It's activity that can result in understanding, pondering on the meaning of the suttas. But even that in itself, as the Buddha said, overly doing it can result in disturbing the mind, and then the mind will go too much the other way.
I've noticed something that when a thing is arisen, a perception, let's say a noise outside, I have fear.
Have fear? What?
Fear is arisen.
Based on the noise outside.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Without trying to avoid that fear, I would go on to abandon sort of grief in regards to that.
What do you mean grief?
Delighting in that notion of fear.
Well, it's not grief.
It's not?
Well, no, grief is grief, basically. Grief is unpleasant, grief is a regret, grief is all those things.
Yeah, but fear is that sort of thing, right?
Fear?
Fear would be...
Well, you're not happy about your fear. You want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you're not grieving over it.
Wanting to get rid of it.
Oh, I see, okay. Basically, okay, yeah, sure. On that subtle level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, you're trying to get rid of it. But grief, it's a bit sort of too coarse.
Okay.
To describe that.
How would you describe
aversion. You have aversion towards the arisen experience, hence you try to get rid of it. You're averse. You're averse towards its arising, towards its manifestation.
Yeah.
Resisting. Yuri. Yuri. Get back here. Sit. So you're averse towards fear, you're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So go on, what do you want to say?
So, when the fear arises, abandoning, carrying that forth, I would usually see it as a delightment of that fear, because fear itself is sort of it is unpleasant, but at the same time you do dwell on it
well, yeah, you dwell on it out of a habit of trying to get rid of it. So what you want to stop doing in that case is not trying to get rid of the fear, or not try to get rid of the fear. You want to stop entertaining the habit of aversion towards something that's disagreeable. That's what you want to stop doing. So you want to start seeing that fear has nothing to do with it directly.
Yeah, but what about the perception of abandonment at that moment? I've noticed that it works in the sense that perception is there, that fear is still persisting, but my
No, I know where you're going with this. Basically, yeah, perception still there, fear is there. Ask yourself, in the most general, the most fundamental, the most obvious, the most present manner, do I want this to disappear? That's where that aversion is rooted. It's not like a subtle moment that you must catch. It's like the most fundamental basis of your mind, basically. The ultimate peripheral in regard to the arisen experience. That's where craving is. That's where you can't see it directly. So you are too concerned with the particulars in terms of, well, there's fear and then there is this and there's this, but failing to see that all of that is already within the attitude for the sake of getting rid of fear. And that's what you want to change. You change that, then you don't care about anything particular that arises on account of fear, because you're not trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to figure it out on account of perception and the fear, start looking back, basically. Start looking in the other direction. Whether you still crave to get rid of the arisen feeling on account of what you're perceiving and fearing and so on. And that's always behind you. The feeling is always behind you, so to speak. You can't perceive your feeling in front of you. If you do, it's a sensation, which means it's not a feeling, it's a perception. So that's what I mean. Stop thinking there's this that I perceived that then result in this fear that now I'm averse towards, or I'm grieving, or I'm delighting. All of that is already within the general attitude of you not wanting to feel it. So you start discerning that general attitude, no particular can cause any issues.
Let me try to put it another way, and I think I don't think I expressed it properly. Like so, like let's say fear, yeah, and I have I noticed the perception, or like whatever perception caused the fear. That the fear is already here, so like I see that I'm trying to get rid of it, but then I notice that, so I sort of step back from that.
Why? Because you're trying to get rid of. You're trying to get rid of.
No, I'm just let it be. Like fear had got nothing to do with sort of like it's already arisen, so I can't really go and meddle with it.
Okay.
So.
But you still had something to. You still had to say that to yourself.
No, but like I would.
No, you just said that. You would catch yourself trying to get rid of it, then you say to yourself, "Oh, just let it be."
Not even that. I see myself trying to get rid of it, but I would still abandon, like while letting things be, I would abandon the well, I would see it as a perception of delight.
Well, you don't really perceive your delight. You delight in what you perceive.
Yeah. So like yeah.
So that's what I mean. You're sort of like it's necessary. It's inevitable way, but you are overly analyzing it as these components that you're leaving, that you're trying to abandon. This all of that is rooted in you. I must do something in regard to this, and that's rooted in basically I will either indulge this or I will get rid of this, depending on how you feel. The fundamental aspect, which is craving, in regard to what's being felt.
But when I abandon the delight, the feeling persists. The feeling persists as in like if it's unpleasant, it persists as unpleasant as long as it persists. So
Yeah.
like I'm not doing anything with the feeling.
Well, how can you delight without feeling a delight, without feeling a prospect of pleasure? What else is it? What is the delight then, if it's not that prospect of pleasure? That's what I mean. Like you place the delight on the perception where you think you can see it, and then you're like, okay, da, 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 and now this is the feeling. None of those things are in front of you in that manner.
No.
In other words, through doing it like that, I'm pointing out that you should start seeing that they're already there, including that delight, and you're either confirming or trying to get rid of the delight. So instead of going through with the action of doing it, you actually include that in that mindfulness properly established peripherally as of something that has arisen beforehand. It's already there. So any effort you make, it's as a result of that which has already arisen there, present for you. So you start including your actions. That's how you surmount them, not by following through with them, so to speak. That's how the mind truly goes beyond. As I said, inevitably you have to follow through various these actions until their nature becomes apparent. But in order to surmount the nature, you disown it. That's how you surmount it. And you disown it when you include it into the arisen experience, not when you follow through with it and get a desirable result. There is still sense of self there involved. So in other words, there is something you heard outside, the fear has arisen. You start discerning what else is there. You don't start, okay, so this is the fear, I must find my delight. You're already doing something. So you start discerning what's already there. So something you heard, fear is arisen. There is the attitude of unpleasant, which means there is the attitude, I don't want it there. which means there is a degree of craving, of trying to get rid of the arisen experience. Which then means that when you start looking for delight, you're doing it for that reason. But then you can't stop looking for where the delight is, where the problem is, but you include that as well as that which has arisen on account of the sound, on account of the feeling, on account of the fear, on account of the craving, on account of the delight. If none of those things were there, simultaneously still enduring, your efforts of trying to see through with that delight and remove it would not be there either. And that's how you actually uproot it. So that's why when in the Sutta, sometimes Buddha kind of seemingly does the analysis of things. It's merely just describing what's there so that you can basically include it all, and that's how you disown it. Not by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the goal is to arrive at the 10.
No, like, that's the thing again, like, the abandonment is never really resulting in anything but sort of ease, like, for the moment.
So, well, that's quite a result. So how can you say abandonment is not resulting in anything except ease?
For the moment, in the sense, like, I have to go through that again the next time. Like, so, whatever is arisen, let's say lust, the lustful thought is there, arisen, and just by abandoning it, the pull is still there.
How do you abandon it?
Not by continuing to delight in it.
Why do you delight in it in the first place then?
Delight is arisen.
Yeah, but why do you delight in it?
It was already there, like...
Yeah, the delight, but why is that your problem? Why do you have to abandon it? That's my whole point. That's what we're trying to talk about last 15-20 minutes.
Because it's...
Why do you have to do it? That's what I mean. You keep perceiving, I must do something. You keep saying no, but I see it's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it oppresses you. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's unpleasant. So
Yeah.
you must do something about it to get rid of the displeasure. We arrived at how I started it.
The
delight in it affects you because it's unpleasant. You want to get rid of it because it hurts. That's it.
The hurt actually continues.
It will never... See, you're mixing the two again. Let's get back how you started describing it. You said it yourself. So let's stick with that. Sensuality arises.
Yeah.
Delight in it. And then you abandon it. Why do you abandon it? Say, because the delight has arisen. Why is that your problem? If the delight has arisen, why do you have to abandon it?
I abandon continuation.
Why? I'm not asking you what you do. I'm asking you why you're doing it.
Because because it's unwholesome to, or rather because not seeing that I've been pressed by the feeling, I continue to indulge in it, or rather I proliferate on that, like lust. I continue to sort of chase after it, but the moment I step back, I see that it hurts. That hurt, I said that pull.
Yeah, well, see, all of that is secondary. I ask you, why do you need to abandon the delight in the first place? Now you're telling me. Now you're telling me all the reasons that happens after and so on.
Yeah, because it hurts.
Because it hurts.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the point of converging, basically, and that's what I keep trying to point at. It's inevitable. You're going to be trying to manage it. You're going to be trying to do it. But you'll never succeed properly until you start seeing this point, because it is that other direction that I'm talking about. And that direction is whereby it hurts. That's the sole problem. Yeah. If it doesn't hurt, you would stop caring about it. But you can't stop caring about it because you take hurt for granted. And you take hurt for granted through your acts of abandoning or doing this or doing that, because, it's unwholesome if I don't do it and so on. All that is true, but none of that is the reason why. The reason why is because you don't want to hurt.
Yeah.
But you hurt because you appropriated the disagreeable, not because you hurt. And you already hinted at that when you said the delight has arisen. That's what I mean. Include that in the arisen thing, not in you.
Say that again.
Include the disagreeable into the arisen thing, not as the result of the arisen thing that now affecting you. That's what I meant in that talk, Nobody Wants Sensuality. The pain of sensuality is sensuality. It's not in you. It's not because you said no. It's not because you didn't do enough. It's because it's unpleasant in itself. And that can only become apparent through restraint, of course, because each time you engage with sensuality, you obscure that principle. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. That pain, that sting of sensuality, that then you feel like there is a delight in it, I must stop this. Yeah, you must stop that through restraint. But that's not like seeing the nature of it. That's management, which is necessary. But don't confuse it for uprooting of it, because it will never uproot it by itself.
Yeah.
So the point is, when you are touched by that unpleasantness, by that delight, when that fear arises or whatever else, you don't have to do anything. And you will be able to not do anything if you see that that delight, that touch, belongs to the arisen thing, not to you. Which means you are touched only because you make yourself so. That's why you're responsible for phasa, for contact.
Well, as long as Puthujana that arises.
Yeah, but as long as you keep chasing your methods of management, you're going to stay at Puthujana as well. So nobody says you should not be restrained. You should not keep be mindful of your eyes, nose, and so on. But if you want to uproot it and not just rely on saying no, you actually have to start understanding the nature. And the nature is that it has nothing to do with you. It's independent. It's agreeable and disagreeable. That's what I was trying to say when you gave the example of the fear. That grief, or whatever you want to call it, that arises, belongs to that fear, belongs to that perception, not to you. So that's already what you start including in that peripheral mindfulness of the enduring experience by itself. And from that point of view, you realize, yeah, I arrived here through restraint, through not sensuality, but at this place, I don't even have to do restraint nor sensuality. Because both things require a form of effort, and now I'm including this in a completely impersonal manner. It's not mine, it has arisen on account of these things. It's enduring by itself. Delight, delightful objects, pleasing sights, nothing to do with you. But the only reason they're a problem is because you make them touch you, so to speak, on the level of feeling. And then you must deal with it, exactly. But dealing with it is management after the touch. You want to start uprooting it. You want to see that it's impossible to touch you in the first place. So I'm not saying you should stop your management and your sort of, mental reflection of abandonment and stuff, but this is what you should aim at. This is what those doings, so to speak, should be aiming at. Not at a kind of, okay, now I succeeded in my reflection because this thing has disappeared. No, things disappear on its own. You want them to bring you back, whereby you won't have to do even that because you're not touched in the first place. Beautiful sight has been encountered. Pain has arisen. It's part of the beautiful experience of the beautiful sight. Not part of you, not part of what you are doing or what you haven't been doing. It belongs to the sight. It belongs to the sound, smell, taste, touch. The simile of the poisonous drink in the suttas. You can extend it, think about it. There is a beautiful beverage in sight, smell, consistency, everything is beautiful. But you know it has a poison that will kill you. So you could reflect and you could see that, yeah, the death is included in this cup basically. The implication of death belongs to this poisonous beverage. Sure, you have to go through it to do it, but if it weren't there, no amount of doing will result in death. So it is there. So that's why you realize pain that you get through restraint of sensuality or whatever else, it's the sensuality. So your restraint is not painful. Your restraint reveals the pain of what sensuality actually is. And from that point of view, you don't need to do anything. All you need to do is not do sensuality.
So the abandonment is not even restraint.
Well,
This
exactly,
aspect.
exactly. A restraint is necessary for you to start sort of building up the basis for abandonment, but abandonment is understanding, not what you need to do on account of that which has arisen and affected you. Because if you understood it, you won't. That's why the contact ceases. The Buddha would say for one who has the right view and who practices correctly. He's not touched. That's the definition of cessation of the contact. Mind you, when I speak about a contact, you have to dismiss completely the commentarial description of it, like one arm, two arms, the clasp, the sound is the contact. It's completely impersonal. No, contact means you are touched. It means a sense of self. I am is involved. It's not impersonal description of how I works, how I and sight mechanism operates. No, that's not contact. And as the Buddha said, I and forms are already out there, and consciousness is already out there. The corresponding engagement of it is the contact. The corresponding engagement that is determined by the presence of avijja or absence of avijja. In other words, if you are ignorant, you are contacted. And that's what I'm talking about when I say it touches you, it affects you. That's all contact. It's not a metaphysical coming together of random things that then results in some secondary sort of experience. No, you are touched, you need to do something about it. You are not touched, you are free from having anything to do. You are free from any burden of duty, any burden of management.
So for a Putujana, there's less contact when mindful.
In a way, yeah, you can say that. He's already beginning to practice if he practices correctly, yeah. Because he'll be just fueling and reinforcing the contact through dependence on his wrong view of management, on his meditation techniques, psychotherapy, whatever he might be doing on account of the suffering that has arisen. That's why I kept going back to it when I say, how does it feel? Unpleasant. That's the sole reason for your action. That's why craving is the root of suffering, nothing else. You remove that, there is nothing for you to do because you don't suffer in the first place. So, and again, that's what I say, some things can be like this, or if it's a delight, or if it's this, or if it's that. All of that is on account of that arisen contact that touched you, basically. All of that. So instead of you chasing those sort of loose ends, trying to manage them, you might do it sometimes if you don't have enough mindfulness, which is basically on a form of restraint. But you don't want to confuse that with a practice. Why? Because if you do, then you won't be looking for what the actual practice is that will result in uprooting it in the first place. And you start uprooting it when you start including it into the arisen experience that is enduring by itself. Changing while standing or persisting while changing, depending on translation. That's what you want to start discerning. Then you realize, even these acts that are now occurring, that are now becoming possible, are within this endurance of this arisen experience as a whole. Not in you, not on you. And that's how prospect of delight doesn't make you delight. Prospect of getting rid of it doesn't make you try and get rid of it. Prospect of indulging it doesn't make you indulge it. Because it belongs to the thing, not to you. It's not your prospect. It's not your possibility. It's not your option.
So abandonment is not something you do.
Abandonment is full understanding. Abandonment is uprooting. Cessation, basically. That's what abandonment is. But as I said, don't now think, okay, so I should not practice restraint. No, that's one thing.
Yeah.
I'm saying don't confuse restraint with the second thing. That is the practice of Dhamma. The abandonment, the uprooting, the extinguishing and so on. Which is, happens just too easily. So if you feel like it's necessary to go through certain mental management of whatever touched you, that's fine, but regard it as a form of restraint. Regard it as a form of leaving the crowd or not looking at enticing sight and so on. And once you kind of fulfill, okay, now it's sort of restrained enough, then you start looking, including that into the arisen thing. Start uprooting it, start surmounting it. Don't think that's where your work ends. That's where your work begins, after you're restrained.
Yeah, I was
But that work is the work you can't do. You can't be performing certain action that will result in well, you can only indirectly perform certain action that will result in freedom from action, in uprooting the action. So the including, the mindfulness that I'm talking about, that's done on the basis of restraint, is not something you can do as a method. It's either you see it or you don't. If not, you have to make the effort to see it. Once you see it, it's effortless. Because the things have arisen on their own. And because they have arisen on their own, all you need to do is recognize that. That's where the Buddha himself just recognized the universal path of the Dhamma. He didn't create any of that. It was already there. The pleasant abiding here and now is the pleasant abiding in the jhana, which is the abiding in non-activity. How it's translated. That's how we arrived at this whole thing. That's why you can't crave for jhanas either, because you're not doing them.
You find them.
You discern them, sure, exactly. First being restrained, having abandoned delight, grief, aversion, whatever, in regard to the sight, smell, taste, touches, in regard to the world. So having been restrained, having abandoned, then the mind settles in. And then you start discerning it, and then you're not doing it. And you realize even when you thought or think you're doing it, you're not. The only way you can think you're doing it is because it was given to you as an option. And that option has arisen on its own beforehand, and it's enduring. So that's why you yourself is not your own. And that's the difference between Pugala, individual, and Atta, and sort of the assumption of self. Yeah, intentionality stays. You can still choose based on the given choices, but none of them will be implying the sense of self and me, or be rooted in the wrong view of Putujana. So practically speaking, mind you, all is pretty practical, but let's give a practical example. An inciting thought a prospect has arisen. Oh, there is a pleasing sight outside. And you feel the pull to go and see it. So first is physical restraint. You don't do it. Then mind still feels touched by it. But you're not trying to get rid of the touch. You're not trying to get rid of all the prospects, because the thoughts, but if I could, if I just look, or if I open the door, or if I go, or if I do this, if I do that. You're not trying to rid of any of that. You're not trying to manage it. All you want to do is stop being touched by that whole thing. That's how you approach sensuality. Not by trying to prevent these sensual possibilities from arising. They are only a problem because you are touched. So you want to remove the touch, then they just stay there, hollow, dead, lifeless. They are not your possibilities. There is no delight in them then. There is no desire for them.
How do you remove touch?
Sorry?
How do you remove touch?
Well, I've been talking about it for the last 40 minutes. You can't, how do you remove touch? Well, you do this, then you do this, then you do this. No, because that will be always done on account of being touched. So you remove touch by discerning how you're being affected. The discerning that that's the problem, and then seeing that that problem doesn't belong to you. Now you people can say, this is not my problem, this is not my problem. But if you do that attitude of this is not my problem, as in doesn't belong to me, too soon, means there are things you haven't seen that are still made yours and thus your problem. So you want to come down to the point of convergence that I'm talking about. The point of touch from which you end up doing all these acts. And then see that point of contact as not belonging to you. And again, it's not a momentary thing. It's not like contact, I missed it. For as long as there is feeling, there is a touch there. you are being contacted. And that's why you have immediate verification when you surmount the contact. It doesn't touch you, yet it's still there. The inciting prospect is still there. The object you wanted to look in the first place is still there, but the pressure's gone. Not because you've done some perfect management, it's because you surmounted it. You saw it as not belonging to you at the right level. The level being the level of feeling, the level of trying to crave in regard to getting rid of the unpleasant feeling. You will stop trying to get rid of the unpleasant feeling when you see that unpleasant feeling is not your problem. It's not your displeasure. It's the displeasure of that thing that's in front of you that's pulling you. That pleasing thing.
But you only surmount contact when, like basically, surmounting contact means you're a Arya.
Well, how do you think Putujan can become an Arya unless he keeps trying to understand what Arya is? Sure, it can mean that. Say it means that. So, is there a reason to not try to do it? I don't understand. How do you think Putujan surmounts? You think he surmounts contact before and then he becomes an Arya? Or he does something else and then magically he learns how to surmount the contact? No. Putujana becomes Arya by trying to understand what Arya is. That's the only method you can have. And there you go. You just outline the work for yourself. When you're touched by unpleasant feeling, when you're touched by the delight in pleasant feeling, which is also unpleasant because you're trying to restrain, that's it. Deal with it and you become an Arya. Nothing else. No mystical secret of the universe that you still haven't been that you need to reveal. No, that's it. Surmount the touch. Surmount the domain of sensuality. Surmount the craving. And you'll be an Arya. So you carry the tools for becoming Arya Savaka, for becoming an Arahant, right where you, in your own feelings. Nowhere else. No left, no right, no before, no after, not up or down from it. It's right there while it's present. And it's always present. You always feel something. Which means there's always craving in regard to something. Which means there's always possibility to become an Arya in regard to something. You just need to keep doing it. And not misunderstanding it for something else that you do. As in restraint and management to see pertaining directly to becoming an Arya. It doesn't. That's why Silabhata Paramasa is a fetter. Virtue and duty. That's what restraint is, basically. It's my duty and it's my virtue. Yet, the Buddha said that's a fetter in regard to Dhamma. So how do you surmount the fetter of virtue and duty without becoming non-virtuous and undutiful? You surmount it by first developing it and then by uprooting it in the way I just described, by seeing that the whole thing, management, even the good management, is actually rooted in the arisen thing, not in you. And then you will automatically stop doing it. Then it's not a matter of choice. But that doesn't mean you become unrestrained. That's what Buddha would say, but the virtue has been developed beforehand. Like he developed the right view, he sort of freed himself from sensuality and so on, because the virtue has been developed beforehand. He stopped doing the bad things, and then he uprooted even the good things.
So the virtue is so... Like,
it's a necessary basis, but it's not the Dhamma. If you conflate the two, you won't be looking for what Dhamma is in regard to the necessary basis. I.e., it's going to fetter you. Holding on to your view of virtue and duty will fetter you from seeing what the Dhamma is in regard to virtue and duty. As they said, there is no Dhamma without virtue and duty, but Dhamma is not virtue and duty.
virtue and duty comes within the
No.
parameters of Dhamma.
Well, no, not necessarily. Like, depends what you mean by that, basically. Comes within parameters of Dhamma means like, so my virtue and duty pertains to the Dhamma. It doesn't. It pertains to the non-virtue and non-duty. That's what virtue and duty pertains to. That's what it's bound with. Dhamma is beyond both. So you understand, understanding where Dhamma is means becoming a Sotapanna. Means freeing yourself from Sila Bhata Paramasa. So yeah, you can ponder on that. It's a valid line of reflection. That's what I mean. You can't do the Dhamma. In a sense, you can do your virtue and do your duty, or do sensuality and non-duty. That's why Dhamma also frees you from karma. Full understanding of Dhamma results in cessation of action. Doesn't result in replacement of action.
Okay. Action as in
Anything that
my
you do.
intentional behavior.
Well, yeah, which is, you can just say intentional behavior, because you already start with a view of my. You don't have to make the effort to make things mine. That's the state of Putujana. Ignorance is his threshold.
So, cessation of action means
Cessation of touch. Cessation of
there.
craving.
Not action, but intention is there.
Well, yeah, from Putujana's point of view, cessation of intention, cessation of action, cessation of feeling, cessation of everything, cessation of consciousness, as the Buddha would say, means cessation of my action, my consciousness, my feeling. So that's what I mean. If Putujana understands, how can Arahant still be conscious, still have intentions, still decide things, still speak, still act, but not do so? He will then be at least a Sotapanna, that Putujana, if he can understand, how can you have intention without my intention? How can there be consciousness without my consciousness? And that's what was described, like Putujana, Seka, and Arahant themselves. The five aggregates are there. There is no difference in the nature of form, feeling, perception, intention, sankharas and consciousness. There is no difference. The difference is the attitude in regard to it. One is fully immersed in appropriation of it. Another one has uprooted the appropriation, needs to spend time basically dwelling on it, or just maintaining it, so to speak, not getting distracted from it. And any residues of appropriation that are still left on the particular level will disappear. Arahant is done, top to bottom. But it's the same five aggregates, it's the same intentionality, same perception. That's why Putujanas can't tell the Arahant, or even Arya, externally. He's not flying in the air and having, pink auras around him and whatnot. Often, people didn't even recognize the Buddha as the Buddha. They thought, oh yeah, he looks calm, but they had no idea who he was, or what he was, or the depth of what he was.
So for Putujana, five aggregates arisen. For an Arya,
well, no, don't say five aggregates have arisen, because that implies you know what was before. Putujana is the five aggregates fully appropriated. Putujana is my of the five aggregates. The experience of Putujana is already affected with my experience. It's already appropriated. So you can't start from first point that's clean. As the Buddha said, avijja is beginningless. Yeah, it shouldn't be there. But the point where avijja was first manifested, before which it wasn't, does not exist. The Buddha said it himself. There is no first point of ignorance. That's what I mean. You start with a mistake as your first point, the mistake of appropriation. Then you reverse engineer it from there. Which means now your experience, top to bottom, is the experience of my five aggregates. So that's what I mean. You then doing the management, or doing what you think you should be doing, or like this or like that, is just built, adding on top of that basis of already appropriated. So you don't want to be adding necessarily. You want to do the restraint first, and then just start discerning what's already there. And then any acts, any possibilities, any options, any management techniques that might arise, you start including them as already there. Not sort of maintain the view, I must keep doing this, because at the end of it, I'll reach the freedom from it. No. You reach the freedom from it by not being touched by it in the first place. Completely the opposite direction. That's what the Ajahn Chah meant when a person becomes Sotapanna, it feels like the whole world is going one way, and you are the only one goes the other way, in every regard, pretty much. Because the natural thinking, the natural everything goes that way. But this is completely the opposite way. Because that's where the roots are. The opposite way from the branches that keep growing and proliferating. The Buddha never talks about, trimming the branches. He talks about uprooting, cutting it at its root. And again, it's not trying to catch a specific mind moment or whatever you want to call it. The root is there throughout. It endures all the time. In other words, any experience you might have, fundamentally, the experience of the 5 appropriated aggregates is already there throughout. It endures. So you're not trying to catch the moment, oh, this is the root. You're actually trying to step into it, so to speak, discern it peripherally as already there, enduring, because of which all these things that are changing in front of you and choosing and this and that are possible in the first place. That's what I meant, the point of convergence. You're already at that level, touched, and then you do all these acts, failing to see that they're all done because you were touched in the first place. So if you were to remove the possibility of being touched through discernment of impossibility of touch in the first place, you would stop doing all of those things. Anyway, we recorded it. It's getting dark, so
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to bombard you with more because it's just the same. But you just keep releasing from the start. It's the same. I keep talking about the same thing, obviously. The point is, see whatever you do on the level of restraint. Do it when you feel it's necessary, but only in order to start discerning the point from which you don't have to do anything. And from that point, engaging with sensuality or ill will become inconceivable. Because that is, as I started this, that already requires a certain dependence on doing something, and then on top of that dependence, well, you want to do what results in pleasure, not what results in displeasure. But if you uprooted doing in the first place, doing anything, whether pleasant or for the sake of pleasure or unpleasure, is equally unpleasant. Because you recognize doing is unpleasant in itself. It doesn't matter how it results. Doing is a burden. Doing is a pressure. Result of the doing is irrelevant from that point of view. So if you already develop this passion towards doing of any kind, how can you then conceive doing sensuality? Or doing ill will or doing anger? You can't.
So to penetrate, you have to basically
Surmount. You have to discern it peripherally as already there. Enduring phenomena. You have to stop doing it. Because what you do is what's in front of your attention. It's what you attend.
But you can't just peripherally see it just once and be done.
Well, yeah, because if you look peripherally, it's not peripheral anymore, isn't it? If you look, it's what you're looking at, which means something else is peripheral in regard to your field of vision, so to speak. That's why you can't attend it. You can just keep gradually discerning layer by layer of all things that are already there. And that attention must be confined within the virtue and duty, within sense restraint. So that's what I mean. In that sense, you have to protect that so that you can discern peripheral in regard to it. But protecting that virtue and duty is not the discerning of peripheral. That's why virtue and duty is not the Dhamma. But there is no Dhamma without that in front of you. There is no peripheral of virtue and duty without virtue and duty developed. Now you might ask, why is the Dhamma, why is the Dhamma the peripheral of virtue and duty and not the peripheral of non-virtue, non-duty? That's just how things are. Or because virtue and duty emulates the principle of Dhamma unknowingly, and non-virtue and non-duty does not. It contradicts the principle of Dhamma unknowingly. So you want to start emulating it in order to discern it. But if you're not even emulating it in front of you, how can you then discern it? Because you're neither doing it unknowingly nor knowingly. It's just not there. Hence, sense restraint is necessary. Virtue is necessary. Because they emulate the principle of the correct nature of things. How? Well, that's your job to discern without losing that basis. Because if you start becoming non-virtuous, well, how can you? Well, peripheral of non-virtue is equally non-virtuous. That's why you can't be mindful doing unwholesome things. Well, you can think you are. And that's how you protect your mindfulness. You protect the peripheral by being virtuous and sense restraint. Not by I'm mindful, I'm mindful, I'm mindful, I'm mindful, I'm mindful, I'm mindful. No. You're mindful by not being non-virtuous and non-dutiful. That's how you're mindful.
Non-virtuous and
And non-dutiful, yeah. Like it's your duty to practice sense restraint. It's your duty to not indulge. It's your duty to sort of, inform yourself, read the suttas. You don't do that, well, good luck figuring out then the peripheral of the duty. The correct duty. The duty that doesn't contradict the universal principle of Dhamma. But it's not your duty to, do pointless things that are today perceived as religious duty. I'm not talking about that. Which is usually how people try to dismiss Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Oh yeah, rites and rituals. No, Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Sila, the virtue, and duty, sense of duty of the virtuous one. I'm a monk, this is my duty. That's what the fetter is. Not lighting shrines and whatnot. No, that's the obvious kind of rites and rituals, but that's not what we are talking. That's not what the Buddha was talking about. If so, he would have called it rites and rituals. He wouldn't have called it the same word for sila, which is a necessary ground for Dhamma. Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Not some ridiculous sila. The sila that you have. The important one. So peripheral of that. Peripheral of your restraint. See, when you start restraining, peripheral of your restraint is non-restraint. Peripheral of your restraint is sensuality, basically. So without giving into that, you want to develop your mindfulness further, whereby peripheral of your restraint is not sensuality anymore. You actually see that sensuality is within your restraint. And the peripheral of that restraint is the neither restraint nor non-restraint. It's basically you don't have to do anything because you're not touched in the first place. That's what the ultimate peripheral you want. Peripheral that surmounts the contact. There's a guided meditation for you.
Yeah, it always is.